Hello and welcome to News9. I'm Aditya Kaul. It's been almost 2 years of the terror attacks that happened in southern Israel, killing more than 1,200. There are still 50 hostages that are there in Gaza in the custody of the Hamas terror organization. And now Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has laid out a 5-point plan, a new plan for Gaza. How will that pan out? And what will be the new reality that will be created in Gaza? To speak about that and more, joining us is the Israeli ambassador to New Delhi, Reuven Azar. Reuven Azar, thank you very much for joining us here in our studios. Let me begin by asking you, what are these 5 points and how much can we trust these 5 points? Because one of the points is, apart from release of the hostages and creating a new reality, also handing over this to the new non-Israeli civilian administration. How does that happen?
Well, just to remind the audience, the aims that we have set on the second day of the war, after this atrocious attack, was that we want to see Hamas out of Gaza, unable to rearm and regroup, and we want to see the hostages back. So we have achieved partially some of these goals because we have managed to bring back 200 hostages, with, as you said, 50 are still there, out of them 20 alive. And we have decimated the military machinery of Hamas. However, Hamas is entrenching, hiding behind the population, entrenching in underground places, in places like Gaza City. Israel controls already about 70% of the Gaza Strip. So instead of renouncing power and admitting defeat, Hamas is trying to extort a victory out of the defeat. And Israel is not going to give it to them because we don't want to see Hamas doing the 7th of October again. So the Prime Minister, beyond these 2 points, has put forward 3 points that derive of the promise that Hamas will not come back. One is that Israel will have to have overriding security control of the Gaza Strip. Because if we are not there, Hamas is going to be there and is going to come back. The second thing is that we want the principle of Gaza being demilitarized, okay, in any future scenario. And the third is that we don't want to control Gaza. We never wanted to control Gaza. We withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005. So we will elaborate, together with our partners and friends, with the GHF, with the Americans, with our partners, a way to manage the Gaza Strip with the help of local Palestinians that are committed to nonviolence. And that is the plan. So we could end the war today, but the fact that Hamas is trying to get this defeat from us is going to prolong the war. And all these countries that are rushing now to recognize the Palestinian state actually are doing a favor to Hamas.
I'll come to that, but let me be a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
You know, I also met the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last week. We had an hour-long meeting, and one of the things that he said is what you are mentioning. He said that we'll have a defense perimeter around Gaza, and we will provide security. So your critics who are going for your throat will now ask you that how will you demilitarize? You say that you will have no control in Gaza and a non-Israeli setup will come in, but still you will provide security. How is that different from, not controlling Gaza? You are controlling Gaza.
There are 2 aspects. There is the military aspect and there's the civilian aspect. We believe in a future in which the Palestinians can rule themselves. The basic things that you have in local rule is taking care of the civilian aspects of life. Education, economy, okay? So we don't want to be responsible of that. I think that it would be a mistake if we would, try to do that. So the situation in Judea and Samaria is one in which there is a Palestinian Authority that is in charge of civilian aspects. And when it comes to the military aspects, we try to get cooperation with them. It's a challenge because the Palestinian Authority is still educating people to hate Israel and to kill Jews. And the cooperation we have on security is far from being perfect. So we find ourselves time and again going into the Palestinian cities in different parts of Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank. There are cities that are stable, like the city of Hebron, for example, and there life is continuing. So we want to be in a situation in which Gaza can have a new beginning, a beginning in which you have moderate forces that can take control of civilian life, and Israel will have overriding responsibility when it comes to security issues. So any entity that comes there is not capable of threatening us. So the rule is that the Palestinians will be able to rule themselves to the extent they don't threaten us.
But do you really believe that the partners that you're speaking about, especially the Arab partners, will they be on the same page with you? Because, apart from these partners, look at Europe, look at France, look at UK, look at now, today, Australia. The Australian Prime Minister Albanese coming out and saying that during the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, they will be recognizing the state of Palestine. And there are more countries coming together to do this at the UN. How would you react to that?
Well, they're doing a favor to Hamas. Hamas has already thanked them. Hamas is taking credit for it because they believe that it's only thanks to the 7th of October attack that they are getting recognized. So I think that these countries are doing a huge mistake. They are sending the wrong message. They are actually prolonging the war because we were about to make a deal for another batch of hostages in return for things that Hamas wanted. But, as a result of this fake campaign of starvation, there's no starvation in the Gaza Strip. We have been providing 2 million tons of food into the Gaza Strip, but people are either naive or they just want to surrender to domestic political pressures. So they are not doing a favor to Palestinians, they're just prolonging the war. And they are causing to a situation in which Israel has no choice but continue the military campaign until we get full control of the Gaza Strip. So these countries, recognition is not going to change the situation on the ground.
What about Donald Trump? What about the Americans? Are they on the same page? Because, there's a hot and cold approach that's coming in. They had a mediator, with Hamas and Qatar and others playing a significant role, saying that there should be a peace deal that should be arrived at. I mean, look at the protests that have happened all across Israel as well. Every Saturday, there are hundreds and thousands of people coming out against PB and saying that there should be a peace deal. So do you think the Americans, which are the biggest partners, I would say, in this war against Hamas for Israel, will they be on the same page?
Well, you asked two questions. First of all, regarding the Americans, yes, we are on the same page. I think that out of the statements of Witkoff and other American officials, you can understand that they are convinced that the reason that we don't have a deal is because Hamas has refused to do a deal, okay? Not because of the refusal of Israel. That's number one. Number two, the president himself has said that we have to get rid of Hamas. And that would be the ultimate solution for Gaza. Gaza free from Hamas. Now, regarding Israel, we are a democracy. People debate. Look, this is a very hard situation. The fact that we've been attacked the way that we've been attacked, the fact that we failed to foil the attack, the fact that we are fighting for 22 months, people are finding it hard to understand why the situation is not over. It's a very difficult situation. If Israel would have been doing whatever all these liars are saying that we are doing, that we are exterminating the population or we are doing ethnic cleansing, we would have stopped all the humanitarian assistance that we allowed in, and the war would be over a long time ago. But the fact of the matter is that the war is continuing because of the complexity of both the hostage situation, but also the dense urban landscape in which we are fighting and the underground military infrastructure, which is huge. So this requires caution, this requires a more slow pace, and of course this slow pace is on the account of the continuing of the suffering of the population, but it's intended to prevent them from getting killed.
Ambassador, you do give a defense of the aid and saying that aid has been not stopped and aid is coming into Gaza. But the global media and a lot of human rights organizations are now putting across videos of children in Gaza in starvation. One, how do you defend that? And second, recently there are now reports of an Al Jazeera journalist being killed in this line of action as well. Is this really justified?
Well, this so-called journalist, his name is Anas al-Sharif, he was a military operative in the military wing of Hamas, has been undergoing military training. He was a commander of a cell in Jabalia. Okay, so the fact that this guy was also disguising himself as a journalist doesn't mean there is not a terrorist. So we actually killed him. Okay, and frankly, Aditya, there is no Al Jazeera journalist who can work in Gaza if he's not an affiliate of Hamas. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to kill all of them, But those that we have proof that are military operatives, yes, they are a legitimate target. Now, going back to the issue of food, we were trying to take the aid out of the hands of Hamas because they were sequestrating the aid as a means to continue their grip and their control over the Gaza Strip by selling it to the population. It had difficulties. The GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is now giving 1.5 million meals per day, had difficulties at the beginning. There was chaos. Hamas was trying to undermine that by, sending military terrorists within the population and started shooting. So the GHF and us shoot back, and that's how people were killed. But we are sorting it out. At the end of the day, GHF is going to continue to expand. We are now expanding it from 4 distribution points to 16. We have been allowing the entrance of trucks. The issue was that we didn't want Hamas to take them over, and we are gradually succeeding in that as well. So there wasn't a policy of starvation. There was a policy of trying to give the assistance directly to the population. There were problems, and therefore there was also hunger in different parts of the Gaza Strip. But this is something that we are working very hard to sort out. And those who are blaming us, they are just, many times not trying to check the facts, and they are actually maybe for political interests. They are using fake news. Take, for example, the 3 cases the Prime Minister was showing yesterday on television about 3 Palestinian kids that were suffering from pre-existing conditions. They were genetic, they had genetic diseases, and they weren't starving. Their family members looked very well, but they got the first page in the New York Times posing as having this condition as a result of starvation. So there's a lot of fake news, there is a lot of deceit, there's a lot of pushing agendas for a political reason, and the viewer has to try to be intelligent while watching the news and not to buy anything that Hamas wants to sell the world. And unfortunately, many international organizations are actually taking Hamas Hamas information as facts.
Why is that case? Because you speak about the fake news that's traveling, you speak about disinformation, you speak about misinformation, but is Israel losing the narrative war then? And why is it so? Donald Trump is a very close friend and an ally of Benjamin Netanyahu, and still we have the New York Times reporting fake news. If that's what
the New York Times is not an admirer of Trump either. Okay, look, we have certainly were unsuccessful in preventing this campaign of starvation from taking the lead, and now we are doing a lot of effort to try to show it's not the case. And the facts speak for themselves. We have only in the last few days there are 350 trucks entering per day. There is 1.5 million meals being delivered. There are on average about 130 pallets being thrown from the airdrops from planes every day. So the effort is there, and frankly, if Israel would be just a so-called genocidal power, as people are trying to portray us, we could have stopped any assistance from entering the Gaza Strip from day one, and the entire population of the Gaza Strip would die. So the fact that the Gaza population is living, is as a result of the fact that we facilitated the humanitarian aid like no other army in the history of conflict has done, to the other side. Give me one example in which one army is supplying to the enemy territory all the food they need in order to continue their war against them. It's unprecedented.
Shifting focus now to another conflict that concluded recently, the 12-day war with Iran. Yeah. And we saw the Americans also come in and then take a back seat. Are you satisfied with the way it went? Are you satisfied of making, and hitting the nuclear facilities out there? And do you really think that the Iranians are incapable now, at least in the foreseeable future, to hit out again and emerge stronger with the nuclear arsenal? Because in the global perception, it almost felt that a regime change was the ultimate objective, but you stopped a step before that.
Our aim wasn't regime change. Our aim was to neutralize 2 existential threats. One was the nuclear military program, and the other one was the ballistic missile program. And that was what we targeted. Of course, that we are going to continue speaking against this regime because we believe that as a result of the fanaticism of this regime, we've been suffering for the last 30 years. They've been attacking us in every way possible. Every terrorist attack, every missile that came to Israel had either an operative that was trained in Iran, that was financed by Iran, that received money from Iran, that the weapon itself came from Iran. So of course that we have an interest eventually that the people of Iran will take the destiny in their hands and get rid of this regime. But we are realistic enough to understand that you cannot do it just from an air campaign, and you have to be realistic on what you want to achieve. I think that the Israeli action was very successful. We've been able to neutralize these two programs. I think that the Iranians know that they are penetrated and they are exposed, that nobody is going to come to their assistance. And if they try to reconstitute these programs, not only that Israel will take action, but also the American president said that he will take action against it. So I think, just to sum it up, that these 12 days were one of the most successful military campaigns that Israel has ever done in its history.
Coming back to another conflict out of Israel towards India and Pakistan, we saw the 4-day military confrontation, and when I met Prime Minister Netanyahu, I spoke to him, and while he did not go into the specifics, he did say that the weapons provided by Israel before the Operation Sindoor began were a huge success during Operation Sindoor. How would you reflect on this entire security operation? Because India has been a victim of terrorism as well. And in the context of Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed meeting Hamas operatives as early as Feb this year, how would you caution India?
Well, first of all, it's no surprise because whatever Israel supplies is always combat proven and works very well in the field because it already worked in the field when we used it before. Yes. So I think the Prime Minister was right by characterizing that situation. I think this is only one example of the things that Israel and India do together, and this is only expanding and getting deeper. We are producing together, we are developing together, we trust each other, and this is an element in the national security of both countries. Now, there's no doubt that there is actually, it's very difficult to say that it's much different what happened in Pahalgam and what happened on the 7th of October, because the terrorists were actually targeting people according to their religion, okay? And the determination they need in order to fight terrorism is very high because these people are very difficult to deter. They are willing not only to sacrifice themselves, but also to sacrifice civilian life, to ruin an entire country, to completely destroy the landscape of a country. So we are dealing with a challenge that is a very difficult challenge, and there's much more that we can do together, which I'm sure we will. But unfortunately, we don't get enough, cooperation from the international community. The international community is contextualizing terrorism. They don't want to, get into a situation that they are not involved. They think they're not involved with. But at the end of the day, this is coming to their backyard, and we have been seeing since the 7th of October in many countries, including Western countries, Western Europe, in Australia, in Canada, in the United States, that you have these radical people that are committing violence in their countries. And these constituencies are only growing, and it's a concern for everybody. So we have to be more efficient in fighting radicalism, and this is a challenge the entire world has. There have been successes. There are some countries that have been able not only to fight terrorism successfully, but also to use soft power, to use education, to prevent the means from those who want to harm us. And I'm sure that, if we get more cooperation, we'll be able to cope with that in a much better way, and we will gain much more stability that will allow us also to, give freedoms to everybody. Because at the end of the day, what these terrorists are doing, they are sequestrating not only our freedom, but also the freedom of our enemies.
But do you feel, you've been in a different chair in the past as an advisor on national security. Do you feel that there is a possibility of Hamas looking out at global Islamist terror organizations like the Lashkar, the Jaish-e-Mohammed and Hizbul Mujahideen, and shaking hands, not just shaking hands, but having some kind of cooperation?
They are trying to find support wherever they can. So they are finding it today with Qatar, they're finding it today with Turkey, of course with Iran that have been supplying them sophisticated weapons. They are finding it in Malaysia, they are finding it in Indonesia, they are finding it in Pakistan, in many places. And this is something that we have to face.
So let me ask you point blank question, Ambassador. Do you believe that it's time that the Indian government should ban Hamas, and why do you think so?
Well, absolutely. I think that there is inspiration that is coming from Hamas. The 7th of October is being perceived as a success among radical organizations around the world. Okay? And if Hamas is not recognized as such, I think it will allow a lot of people to get donations for them, to demonstrate in favor of them, to organize activities of support for them. And the same people that do that, they do things that you don't want them to do vis-a-vis your security situation. So I think it's something that would be very commendable if it happens.
You know, Ambassador, I also want to ask you, although you don't speak much about, you know, the defense partnership or the intelligence sharing, etc., the Prime Minister mentioned that I believe that the intelligence sharing needs to be taken to another level between India and Israel. He also said that the defense agreements will be further, enhanced. I saw that during the Operation Sindoor, you were briefed by the Ministry of External Affairs, and then you had a meeting with the Defense Secretary as well. So could you share at least something as to how this intelligence sharing and the defense cooperation will be taken to another level?
Well, first of all, we have the intentions to take it to the next level, and as much as we speak less about it, it will be more successful.
All right. Well, yes, but let me then go to further, on the diplomatic ties between India and Israel. There are a lot of plus that has happened. You know, Indian workers, Indian caregivers, Indian engineers going to Israel in the last 2 years. But the Prime Minister said that there have been some bureaucratic hurdles. How do you plan to, go get rid of these bureaucratic hurdles? And also, he said that I really want a direct flight between Tel Aviv and Bangalore to happen. How soon can that happen?
Well, that's a good question. We are having a quota that we were given by the Saudis and the Omanis to fly over them to India. This has been given to Indian companies. So we are trying to convince Indian companies to do this flight. Air India was doing it in the past. If they decide that they don't want to do it in the future, we'll have to find other companies, and I'm working diligently to try to achieve that. I think direct flights is essential if we want to have more business connections. When it comes to workers, there are basically two channels. One is the private sector channel, and one is the governmental channel. Because of concerns that have to do with human rights, there is a tendency among many governments to try to establish governmental channels that will make sure that people will not be exploited by private sector companies. This channel does not always work smoothly. We are working in order to make it smoother. And frankly speaking, the private sector is not necessarily a bad channel. You have to verify that it works well. So there are very good companies that are supplying Indian workers to all over the world, including to building American embassies and to meet all the standards that need to be met. We just have to make sure that it happens. And I think that we've been succeeding because the number of Indian workers has doubled in the last year, and it has the potential to double again. So it depends mainly on the demands of the Israeli market, but the workers are being welcomed. And there are many other issues we are doing bilaterally. It's not just that. We are now negotiating a bilateral trade agreement that I hope will be finalized before the end of this year. We are bringing a delegation here to deal with all the financial transactions that are still too expensive between the countries. And we are doing an effort to get Indian infrastructure companies to apply for tenders in Israel, and that also is being worked on. So I hope that by next year we'll start to see some of the results of that effort, and I think it's going to boost our trade. We have the will, we have the motivation. I think that there is a lot of interest also coming from Israel, from the top echelons of the business community, of the academia. You know, I was very fortunate to see presidents of universities coming here and you know, making connections and contracts. We are introducing new technologies to India, especially in the agricultural sector. Only this year we are going to introduce 3 new technologies in our centers of excellence that we have with India. So there are many good things coming up.
Well, when I met the Prime Minister Netanyahu, very with a smile on his face, recollected how he met Prime Minister Modi in Israel and didn't walk you know, around water but in water. And that's a very you know, video that went viral.
Yeah.
So could we see Prime Minister Netanyahu visiting India soon? Because that's been on cards for a very long time. He had to cancel the previous visit during the pandemic, and it's been so long.
Right. It's about time.
It's about time. One last question before I let you go, because I just remembered that a very important development has happened in the last 24 hours. And this is the Indian Army Chief, General Upendra Dwivedi, while recollecting Operation Sindoor and speaking about in detail terror organizations, he mentioned Hamas as a terror organization. And this is a first from the very top of the Indian government, and that too, the military leadership. How do you see this? Do you welcome this?
Well, we noticed, of course, and of course we welcome it.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, Ambassador Azar, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditya.